Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Graham Wedge from MMP, one of the gold sponsors for this conference this week. I have the pleasure today to introduce Ryan Weston, the Vice President of Exploration, to talk to us about the exciting developments in the Ring of Fire. So with that, Ryan, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Graham. And thanks everybody for your participating today. And I know there were some technical difficulties earlier on, but it looks like we've got that under control. So good timing. So today I want to talk to you about the nickel prospectivity in the Ring of Fire. I'm just going to forward here. There we go. Standard cautionary note regarding some language that I might be using. I'm a geologist, so the glass is always half full in my world. So a little bit about Noront. If you don't know who we are, we're a mineral and exploration development company working in the Ring of Fire. Thunder Bay is down here. The Ring of Fire is up here. Can everybody see my mouse, by the way? Hopefully so. Our goal is to develop the Eagle's Nest nickel, copper, platinum, palladium mine and follow that up with development of some of our chromite resources in the area. In the meantime, while we wait for the roads to make their way up north, we continue to do exploration and with the goal of building out an extensive pipeline of base metal projects. We're very committed to working with our First Nation partners in the area and have a strong focus on health and safety and the environment. A little bit about the nickel market. Unless you've been living on Mars in the last couple of years, you will be well aware of the demand for nickel, the forecast demand for nickel for electric vehicle batteries. Nickel primarily is used in the stainless steel business, but there is a very strong demand that's already developing and is forecast to be quite strong in the next sort of mid to long term scenario. So to account for nickel battery in electric vehicles. Right now, by 2025, we expect that the demand for nickel for EV batteries is going to be somewhere between 150,000 to 500,000 tons. And that's within a market that's really only about 2 million tons. So you can see in this little diagram on the right here, most nickel, lithium cobalt batteries, nickel is about 37 kilos. So, about 75, 80 pounds of nickel per vehicle. Lots of carbon reduction emissions going on worldwide. And so nickel is going to play a major role in that. Our Eagle's Nest project, once in production, will be able to provide nickel for up to 400,000 electric vehicles per year. There's been a bit of a surge recently in the nickel price, and part of that is due to sort of COVID. The COVID supply deficit and disruption is starting to wane a little bit. We expect that the Chinese stainless steel production will pick up again, and then now with the electric vehicle demand and battery demand, that the mid to long term price forecast for nickel is quite good. There's a limited supply of new projects, nickel sulfide projects globally, which is leaving some smelters short of concentrate. And also potential for sort of a separation of nickel concentrate classes, including a class 1 sulfide nickel premium, and so which Eagle's Nest would provide. So in short, it's a great time to be looking for nickel, and the Ring of Fire has an excellent nickel project and lots of exploration upside. I'm going to talk a little bit about the discovery history in the Ring of Fire, and just to kind of get people a flavor for, the continued nickel prospectivity. So on the left here is a table that just by year, some of the major discoveries up in the Ring of Fire. In bold are all of the discoveries made by Noront. And then on the right is a claim map, and we'll kind of go, skip through a few years scenario with Eagle's Nest highlighted here, and all the red claims are Noront claims. So really things started in the Ring of Fire in 2002, 2003 with the discovery of the McFolds 1 and 3 copper zinc deposits over here in the eastern part of the belt. In 2007, Noront discovered the Eagle's Nest deposit, and that really spurred a major staking rush in the area, kind of the biggest one since Voisey's Bay when we're talking about nickel exploration. In 2009, this is a claim map here, and you can see these little stars in here are all of the major chromite discoveries that were made in 2008 and 2009, a long strike of Eagle's Nest. In 2012, 2013, there was a major contraction in exploration up in the Ring of Fire globally because of the decrease in metal prices. Plus, it's a challenging area to work. It's expensive, logistically challenging. So, but that set the stage for Noront to be able to consolidate the land position, which we did through the acquisition of the Cliffs claims, as well as McDonald Mines and some of our own staking. And so here we are today in 2021, Noront's claim position in red, and we feel we have the dominant land package up in the Ring of Fire. We're going to zone in now a little bit on Eagle's Nest. So this was initially, the target was identified in 2004 as a geochem survey anomaly, and it was assumed to be another VMS target. So it wasn't actually drilled until 2007 because there were several other targets in the area that were being drilled. But that first hole proved that it was not VMS, that was a magmatic nickel copper PG sulfide deposit. And as you can see in this 3D image here, this is the pierce point of that discovery hole, not 0701, which returned close to 72 meters at over percent nickel, close to percent copper, and 2.8 gram PGs within net textured sulfide. So there's the scale bar down here. That's a kilometer. And you can see the extensive drilling that's taken place since then. We've drilled 127 holes, about 63,000 meters, and that's defined a vertically plunging ultramafic conduit with the sulfide mineralization hugging the base of that conduit. Mineralization is dominated by net textured sulfides, but we do get some good accumulations of massive sulfides, especially towards the top of the deposit. The deposit itself has been drilled down to a depth of about 1,300 meters, remains open, and there's sort of an upper domain, which is very rich in massive sulfides. That would be up in here, and then the lower domain is more of a net textured sulfide domain. We do see massive sulfides. It's a harder area to drill because of the form and depth. So we fully expect once the deposit is into production and we get underground, that we'll be able to drill off some of those massive sulfide lenses at depth. So as I mentioned, the deposit has about a 1,300 meter dip extent, but on surface, it's quite a small expression, only about 150 meters long by 20 to 50 meters wide. And that's quite important because when we look for these analogs in the Ring of Fire, the surface footprint is very small. And so you cannot discount any kind of a small mag or small EM mag anomaly because it may well have that dip extent. This is a bit of a close-up view of the upper domain. So here's a long view of the deposit. This was a hole we drilled in last February, just before COVID, some metallurgical drilling that we were doing in the upper domain. In this red zone in here is massive sulfides, orange net textured sulfides, and yellow is disseminated. And you can see the sort of widths that we're getting up in this upper domain, 36 meters at 8.2% nickel, 4% copper. Sorry, how to get rid of that, I don't know. Oops. Can't see the numbers here. 1 gram platinum, 10 grams palladium. So very high grade, thick accumulations of massive sulfide in that upper domain. In 2012, the company completed a feasibility study on Eagle's Nest, and that defined an 11-year reserve There are inferred resources at depth, which conceptually could extend the mine life from 11 to 20 years. It's a very small footprint mine. It will be, in fact. And if you look over on the right images, this is our Esker site exploration camp today. And this is a conceptual mine design. So the cleared area in this mine design basically matches that which is cleared at Esker site today. So it'll be a very small footprint, but high profit mine, about 3,000 ton per day underground operation. So no open pits, no need for a tailings facility, no waste rock piles or surface quarries. It will be a nice sort of compact, small mine. Because of the byproduct credits, it's also anticipated to be one of the lowest quartile cost producers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later when we talk sulfide tenors. There's some more work what we need to do at Eagle's Nest. We want to do some trade-off studies, update the feasibility study, look at creating two separate concentrates, a nickel and copper con, moving the concentrator up to surface, incorporating a cobalt resource, because back in 2012, cobalt was not worth anything near what is worth today. So yeah, some work that we want to still do at Eagle's Nest. Okay, I'm going to move on to some of the regional geology and with a focus on the nickel prospectivity and some of the host intrusions in the Ring of Fire. So bears mentioning that nickel mineralization in the Ring of Fire is hosted by ultramafic intrusions. Those intrusions formed as flow-through magmatic systems, and the sulfides themselves are typically very high tenor. And by high tenor, I effectively mean high grade. There are sort of two groups of mafic ultramafic intrusions in the Ring of Fire that are associated with the Muckatai volcanic assemblage. And those are all dated about 2734. It's a tight age cluster in there for the volcanics and the intrusions that host the nickel, copper, and chromite. The intrusions can be divided into two main groups: the Copper subsuite, which is an ultramafic subsuite, hosts all the nickel, copper, PG sulfides to date, as well as the chromite in the Ring of Fire. And then the Ekwan subsuite, which is dominantly ferrogabbros, and they host widespread iron, titanium, vanadium mineralization. Importantly, the Ekwan subsuite is about 10 times more abundant than the Copper subsuite, but much less prospective for nickel. So, you know, from an exploration targeting perspective, it's important to be able to distinguish between the two when you are generating targets. Remember, you're working in the Ring of Fire where there's virtually no outcrop, and a lot of the geology, in fact, all of the geology is inferred from mag and drilling. So if you have a target that's got no drilling, it's got a similar mag expression between the ferrogabbros and the ultramafics, that can be tricky. So, you know, there's all sorts of tools that we can use, but something to pay attention to. I'm going to zoom in on this little blue box in my next slide. This is what we call our main block. And sorry, it's a bit granular, this image, but what you can see here is basically the geology map for the ultramafic intrusions, which host the chromite and the nickel sulfides to date in the Ring of Fire. It's been rotated so that north is now pointing down and to the left. In purple are and this light blue are the Copper subsuite of rocks. These are dominated by olivine, chromite, pyroxene cumulate rocks, so peridotite, pyroxenites, and chromatites. The intrusions themselves form sills, and you can see this is one sill here, the Blackthorn intrusive complex. This is a lot more chopped up, but this is the Double Eagle intrusive complex. Beneath those sills are feeder dikes, like what we have at Blue Jay, and chonoliths, which is what we have at Eagle's Nest. And a chonolith is just a name for sort of a magmatic conduit, almost tube-like in form. Worth stating here that based on the abundance of olivine and chromite, coupled with the form of these intrusions, they're interpreted to have been open flow-through systems. And what does that mean? Basically, what is preserved today in the geological record really only represents a fraction of the total volume of magma which passed through these systems. And that has some important implications when it comes to the sulfide tenors, which we'll talk about a little later. This is an idealized cartoon of what an ultramafic sill in the Ring of Fire looks like. You have the main body in purple here, which are composed of dunites and peridotite. Towards the top of the intrusion, you get your chromatite seams, and above that, in this cyan color, are pyroxenites, leucogabbros, norites that sort of cap the system. The roots of these sills are really what are most interesting for us when we're talking about nickel exploration. You can have small embayments and or keels to these sills where we get nickel sulfides, as well as the feeder chonoliths underneath. So imagine that sort of this is the plumbing that fed a lot of the magma up into those sills. And the Eagle's Nest deposit sits in one of these conduits underneath the Blackbird sill, and the Blue Jay nickel copper PG occurrence sits in the keel to the Black Thor intrusive complex. Talk a little bit about the interpreted emplacement and structural model of these ultramafic rocks in the Ring of Fire. So this is a bit of a block model that we've developed, where we have a footwall tonalitic basement rock, which is intruded up into the volcanic package in green in here. At some point around 27-34 million years ago, there was some extension in the crust, which allowed these ultramafic magmas to worm their way up from depth, from the mantle, up towards the top of the granite at the contact between these granitoids and the volcanics. We'll zoom into this little square patch here. So here, it's at this point when those magmas reach that granitoid volcanic contact that they start to sill outwards, and you've got sort of focused flow and deposition of nickel sulfides, as well as the chromite deposits. And this little diagram sort of is just an idealized version of what we have here. And then somewhere around 2,700 million years ago, so about 30 to 40 million years after these magmas were emplaced, there was regional doming and tilting of the stratigraphy to a near vertical current position, and which effectively and subsequently erosion and glaciation has left us with a cross section of the crust where these intrusions have come in. So this would be the sill here. This would be some of the plumbing in the footwall to the sills. So what kind of one of the key takeaways that I'd like the audience to appreciate here is that the footprint of these conduits is quite small on surface, but you can see the depth extent, which is very continuous and may go for kilometers. And that's really the focus of our exploration efforts, is in some of these smaller footprint targets. Eagle's Nest itself would sort of, the mineralization would start up near surface and kind of worm its way down, but it's entirely feasible that the sulfide mineralization doesn't start right at surface, but maybe starts 200 or 300 or 400 meters down and continues with depth. And those are the targets that we think have yet to be discovered, because they would be blind to any airborne electromagnetic surveying. Okay, now I want to talk about the sulfide tenors in the Ring of Fire. I sort of briefly touched on it earlier on, but so sulfide tenors are just, it's another way of sort of comparing apples to apples. If you have a rock that's only got 5 or 10% sulfide, and then you have a rock that's got 100% sulfide, what would happen if you took that rock with the 5 to 10% sulfide and found the massive sulfide equivalent of it? So we basically take the grade of that disseminated mineralization and normalize it up to 100% sulfide. So this is a standard measure used in the exploration industry in exploring for nickel, to sort of compare apples to apples. And you can see within the Ring of Fire, so all of these red dots here are the nickel occurrences and or deposits that are shown on this table here. Very high nickel tenors, between 6 and 8% nickel. sort of between 3 and 4.5% copper. PGEs anywhere from a couple grams, but more likely averaging half ounce. This is very high tenor, high value ore. And just for some comparison, at Voisey's Bay, for example, the tenors are about 3% nickel, so good nickel tenors, decent copper tenors, not a lot of PGEs. Raglan, very good nickel, very good copper, decent PGEs. Sudbury, depending on where you are, the contact ore bodies have good nickel, good copper, okay PGEs. In the footwall environment, very good PGEs, not as good as nickel, not quite as good. So suffice to say, what we see in the Ring of Fire, these are good quality sulfides that have generated in the magmatic systems, and so makes the search for more of these types of Eagle's Nest deposits worth it. And then this is just a sort of an up-close shot of that massive sulfide that I showed earlier in my presentation from Knot 2001. You can see this is a massive sulfide intersection. All of these yellow blebs here are chalcopyrite segregations, and then the bright kind of circular silvery colored minerals are pentlandite. So very high grade, good quality ore.
And Ryan, it's Kevin. I'm just going to jump in for just one moment. We are going to run out of time, probably quicker than we want. I know you're almost done, 27 out of 31 slides. So just keep in mind, we probably got 2 or 3 minutes left.
Okay, sounds good. Just very quickly, in terms of the state of exploration maturity in the Ring of Fire, all of the known deposits within the top kind of 15 to 20 meters, or the majority of them, have probably been discovered, and that was the low-hanging fruit. Now it's on to finding these deeper deposits, and we know they exist. The Black Horse chromite deposit, which was discovered in 2010, starts at 350 meters depth. The McFolds number 8 VMS lens similarly starts at 350 meters depth. When you compare the Ring of Fire to some other nickel camps like Sudbury and Thompson and Raglan, those all started with very shallow deposits, and they continued to progress with progressively deeper exploration to find more and more ore bodies. So it's our view that Ring of Fire will be no different, but with that, it will require a very thorough understanding of the 3D geology. And then this is just a high-level view of some of the nickel targets we've identified in 2019, many of which have never been tested. We will be focusing in on our main block where we have the best geology, the lots of data, and lots of known prospects. So in summary, the Ring of Fire has an unusually high mineral endowment. 8 deposits have been discovered and over 75 mineral occurrences over a 15-year period, despite the logistical challenges and the high costs of exploring in the region. Based on our understanding of the geology in the area, we think that the potential for additional base metal discoveries at depths below the traditional detection limits of airborne surveys is quite high. We've consolidated the land package and feel we have the most prospective ground, and that positions us for continued exploration success. Our lead project, Eagle's Nest, will benefit from the growing demand for nickel, which will feed the burgeoning electric vehicle battery market. And all of this sort of dovetails, I guess, into, to say that, as everybody probably knows, that Noront is now subject to a takeover bid by both BHP and Wyloo. And, not terribly surprising given the quality of Eagle's Nest, the continued nickel prospectivity in the belt. So thank you very much, Kevin and Glenn, for organizing this and putting on the talk. And if there is time for questions, happy to field those. Otherwise, you can always reach us in the booth, the virtual booth that we have set up.
Ryan, outstanding. Thank you so much for a very comprehensive presentation this morning or this afternoon. I know we're probably running out of time here, and there likely is going to be a litany of questions. So Ryan, if people, whether they're, potential vendors with you, or companies that want to be part of the project, what's the easiest way to get their questions answered and get updates and sort of get into the mix with Noront at this point? What's the easiest way to do that?
I would say through the booth. If there are questions relating to the transaction, I will sort of connect them up with Greg Reevely, our CFO. If they're related to exploration or as you say, some of the vendors that may have questions or want to have a discussion, myself and my colleague Mike Desolé will be manning the booth for the next few days, and happy to meet with people there.
Awesome, folks. So you heard that. So the portion of the platform that is the actual virtual booths, please make sure that you stop by and see Ryan and his partners to help get your questions answered. We're going to run out of time here. I want to thank everybody for being here. The next presentation.